Welcome to Meaning Over Money, a different kind of financial podcast where money is never about money.
Welcome. Thank you so much for tuning in. We are so excited to have you here. We hope you're having an awesome week, and regardless of when you're listening to this, we hope it adds value to your journey. A friend recently reached out, and I wrote a blog post about making sure that we are ready for the storm. Now, in the blog post, I talked about the literal snowstorm that had hit us here in the Midwest, but it was really about the proverbial storm, the storm of life, that things are going great for us until the moment they don't. Things are going okay until it feels like a nightmare, and it can turn on a dime. And my point was, we need to be prepared. We need to be ready. We need to have, and part of this is we need to have some cash available, not for if the storm comes, but for when the storm comes, because the storm's coming. It always does. It always will. And if you've been around long enough, you know exactly what I'm talking about. If you're young enough, if you're young, you might not have had the storm yet, but it's coming. And I'm not trying to be all Debbie Downer. I believe it's part of what makes life beautiful. Life can't be great unless you have some of the struggle and the challenges as well. If everything's just rosy all the time, the good doesn't feel as good. So that's the context. And on the heels of that blog post, I had a friend, he reached out and he said, this is a great point. Thanks for sharing. He said, I have $80,000 and here's how I have it allocated in my, essentially his emergency fund, $80,000. Like, well, first of all, props to him. There's not much that's going to knock his family out. $80,000 is an awful lot of protection. So props to you, friend, for getting yourself in that spot. That's not normal, and that's a compliment. But he asked me the question, he says, where should I be keeping all of it? So I wrote him back and I said, here's how I would look at it if I were you. Here's how I look at it in my own family, and here's how I help clients. Think about it. I think about our emergency liquidity, cash, the cash that we potentially can use when we need it. I think of it in three separate categories. I'll take you through the three, and then I'll kind of give you a little bit of a case study on this, kind of an example. The first category is this: I need the money today. If you needed money today, how much would you potentially need? And if you need money today, where would it need to be? And for me, I'm a firm believer in this. I think we should have a savings account tied directly to our primary checking. Because when we do that, we can jump on our bank app or on the website, and within 5 seconds, we can transfer that money over. Boom, it's there, instant. We can have that money today. The second block is, I need that money within a few days. You know, some emergencies, you need the money today, and others, you may not need it today, but you might need it in a few days. And for this, I'm a big fan of high yield savings accounts, money markets, something that's going to earn you a decent return while you have it sit there, and you're not going to use it for other things, but it's accessible so that in a few days you can have access to it. There's a lot of high yield savings accounts. You can Google which ones are the best. Right now, you can easily get 5% between a high yield savings account or a money market account. You can easily get 5%. One great way, we talked about this in a prior episode, is if you just open up a regular brokerage account in Vanguard, a taxable brokerage account, and you deposit your money but don't invest it, that's 5%. Actually, it's about 5.3% right now. But again, you can't get this money today. I mean, you obviously have access to it, but it's at a different institution. So if you need this money, you can immediately say, hey, Vanguard, hey, high yield savings account, hey, money market, wherever you're at. You can say, hey, I need this money, take this money, send it to my checking account. You can do that anytime. There's no strings, there's no fees, there's no commitments. You just push a button and say, hey, I need this money. Hey, Vanguard, hey, high yield savings account, I need the money. Send it to my checking account. That may take a couple days. So it's available, but it's not available today. And here's the third group. The third group is, I may need it, I may want it, but it's kind of in excess of this block of money that I have to have available within a few days. And for me, I'm a big believer in the taxable investment account. And we've talked about prior episodes about in a taxable investment account, you can just invest in the total market index. You could have the money invested over a long period of time that you can get to anytime you want. I could go into my taxable account right now and I could sell some shares, transfer it, and in a handful of days, I could have it in my checking account. It's there. It's accessible. However, when you're invested, you have the potential that it could go down in value. You have the potential you could lose a bunch of money in the near term. Not the long term, in the near term. But if you need access to this money, or you want access to this money, you have to be prepared that at any given point in time, it could be down. It could be down. Then you have to make a judgment call. Am I going to choose not to take the money out, or am I willing to take the money out even though it's down? So those are your three buckets. And here's my advice to my friend. And again, I didn't have full context of his life, and so this wasn't firm recommendations, but I'm just trying to give him some color. And here's what it might look like. Ask yourself the question, what's the worst thing that could happen to me today that I would need money today, right now? And I think for most people, it's probably $5,000, maybe $10,000, but $5 or $10,000. And so maybe that's what you house in your savings account that's tied to your checking account, $5,000, $10,000. And again, my friend had 80. What's the worst emergency that you could have, period? What's the worst thing that could happen to you, period, that you need money for here in the next handful of days? For a lot of people, that's a house emergency. That's a furnace and air conditioner, maybe a roof issue, maybe water damage. There's several things. Maybe it's a job loss. Maybe it's a medical thing. So depending on the answer to that number might be, you might need $20,000, $30,000. And I walk my clients through this exercise to try to define what's the worst thing that can happen to you financially. And so let's just say that number's $30,000. I'm using round numbers. $30,000. So let's just say you need $10,000 today, potentially today. You need $30,000 potentially in the near term, in the next handful of days, perhaps. So that's $30,000. So you already have the 10 in the I need it today. Then maybe you would put 20 in the I need it in a few days in a high yield savings account, money market. And then that would leave you with about $50,000. So $10,000, $20,000, and then $50,000 in your taxable. So at the end of the day, you have access to $80,000. $10,000 would be available to you today. Another $20,000 would be available to you with no risk, no ties, in a matter of a handful of days. And then you could have $50,000 that's growing long term, but you could access it in a matter of days if you want to or if you need to. And so he's protected on different layers, but he also has momentum building in bucket 2 and then really more so in bucket 3, and that he can be rest assured that he's going to be taken care of along the journey of when the storm hits us, not if, when the storm hits us. And I find that to be a very practical way to look at this. And I say that through the lens of, number one, I meet with people that don't have anything, to which I say, we need to get that taken care of. We need to figure that piece out. Critically important that we figure that piece out. Let's get something. Put it in a savings account, tied to your checking. We got to have something to protect you. You can't be naked. But I also meet with people on the other side. I've met with couples that keep $200,000 to $300,000 in their checking account. And some of you that I'm talking about are probably listening to this right now. So, hello, friends. And we laugh about it. We laugh about it because we don't know what to do sometimes, and some people are blessed, and props to them. I hope we're not getting jealous of people, but they're blessed, but they didn't know where to keep it, but they know that they need to have money available in case something happens. But a couple $100,000 in a checking account, I think we would all acknowledge is a little bit excessive. It's a little bit over the top. So we walk through this exercise. Well, how much do you need today? How much might you need in a handful of days? What could go wrong? And then maybe we have a taxable account that will grow long-term over here. And when we can step through that conversation, step through those questions with ourselves, we're going to end up in a better place. But I'm glad you're asking yourself these questions. If you're not, I hope you do. Ask yourself these questions. Get yourself ready. Put structure around your finances so that you don't have to freak out and you're not hoarding. Don't hoard. But know what your risks are, know how you're going to operate it so that when, not if, when the storm hits, you're ready. And when we're ready, we don't have to lose sleep, we don't have to stress, we don't have to freak out, we don't have the tension in our marriage. We can just live our life of meaning. Meaning over money. That's all I have today. Take care, guys.